Have you ever wanted to have one of those really nice social tickers that rotate your YouTube, your Twitter, your Discord, and maybe your Twitch accounts and reminders to sub with Prime on your screen, but you're not quite sure how people do it? But you also want it to stay with your webcam, kind of like what we're doing here, so it kind of stays uniform and easy to manage. Well, that's what we're doing today. Some people, whenever they do this, will actually create a video that just has all of the information that you need in order to show whatever socials that you want to show, and they just loop this in a video source in OBS. However, that is entirely static. So what that doesn't allow you to do is show things like your current follower goals, your current sub goals, and anything else that you need to change at any given time. So what we're going to be doing is we are instead going to be doing this entirely with software so that we can change things on the fly and so we can have dynamic information such as the follower and sub goals that we set up in the last video whenever we did our milestone alerts. So most of the things that we're going to be doing here is actually going to be on the front end. There's not actually very much that's going to happen within the bot itself. So let's just get the bot side of things out of the way first so that we can then move on to the visual side of this, because really all this is just a visual representation of the data that we set up in the last video. So the first thing that we need to do is set up a new socket listener. And so you might recall that I was setting up a socket event emission in the last video and saying that it was going to be a preview or a sneak peek to the next video. Well, this is what this is. So this is where we're going to actually need that socket listener. So what we're going to do is we're going to set up a new socket listener, and we're going to call this, or at least we're going to call the event get Twitch metrics like this. And the second argument that we're going to need here is a function, just like we've been using for all of these other listeners. We don't need this to be an asynchronous function. We should be fine with just leaving it as it is. And within this function, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be emitting an event right away, as we most often do. So what we're going to do is we're going to emit an event that is also going to be called get Twitch metrics. And the data that we're going to be passing through is actually going to be a JSON object containing all of the current follow information and current sub information, as well as the goals for both the follows and the subs that we set up in the last video. So if you recall, we had the current follows data, and then we had the current follow goals, and then again, the current follow goal. And then with the subs, we have the current sub points. So since we're tracking this in subscriber points instead of individual subscribers, we're going to be using sub points. So current sub points, and then we have the current sub goal. And if you're wondering what the actual end result is going to be, you can see that right under my webcam. That's actually what we're building in this video, is what you're seeing right under my webcam. So now that we have this listener set up, what we need to do is we also need to set up a new HTTP route in order to access the page that this is going to be running. So the overlay itself is just like all of the other overlays that we've built so far, is just a web page. Except in this case, it's going to be a really small web page that is specifically designed to be the size specific to our webcam. And you'll also notice on the left side in our file structure, I've already set up some files, one for the Twitch webcam metrics HTML, and then another for the JavaScript file, and another for the CSS file. So just like all the other stuff that we've done so far, we're going to say the overlay app, and we're going to have a GET request. So we're going to be handling a GET request, and the address for this one is going to be /Twitch webcam metrics, like this. And then we're going to be taking in a function that handles our request and response, as we've done before. And within this function, we are simply going to return a response and then send the file of the particular web page that we're looking for. In this case, we are looking for the Twitch webcam metrics HTML file. So just like before, we are going to pull in the directory name plus the HTML folder, or /HTML folder, /Twitch webcam metrics.html, like so. And that's all we have for needing to handle the bot side of things. So before we go on to the client side JavaScript, the front end JavaScript, what we're actually going to do is we're going to set up all of the CSS classes and IDs and all of that first, so that whenever we're doing the front end JavaScript stuff, it'll actually give us some nice autocomplete. So we're going to move on to the Twitch webcam metric CSS file. And within here, we're first going to set up the body tag. What we want this to do is we want this to have a width of 100%, and we want a height of 60 pixels. And all of this stuff right here is very specific to my webcam setup. So once you figure out your particular dimensions and things that you want out of this, then you can put these specific metrics in on your side. Or you might want this to be just like a square box that sits either statically on your overlay, or it can like slide in and out every 10 minutes or so, or whatever it is that you want. But this is just specific to a webcam overlay, like what you're seeing under my webcam. So right under the body, we're going to set up a wrapper. We're going to do the wrapper div. So if you're curious what the HTML looks like, this is the HTML, and it's just like all of the HTML pages that we've set up so far. It's just a basic HTML page. Then we set up a wrapper div right here, which then contains another div that holds the current metric. And so I like to have wrappers within my HTML because it gives me a little more control within the CSS, like what we're doing right now. So within the wrapper div, what we're going to do is we're going to set up a background. And within this background, we're going to have a linear gradient. And I actually got the information for this linear gradient from a website that I will leave in the description of this video. And what it's doing is it's just setting up a gradient that is transparent on the edges for the first 10% and the last 10%, which then has a gradient into white and then has a midpoint of white in order to maintain consistency, and then goes back to the last 10% of white and then back to transparent. So it would look something like this. Again, I'll leave the link to this page in the description so that you can create your own gradient if you so desire. And then right after this, we're going to have a width of 100%, just like before, and a height of 60 pixels. And we also want the position of the wrapper to be relative. Now that we have the wrapper done, what we can do is we can set up the current metric ID. And thank you so much for that 34-month sub, sir. I really do appreciate it. You should actually be getting some text.
Can I be famous?
So you're already famous, Anger. Thank you so much, sir. So as a preview, that text-to-speech is not running off of Streamlabs or Stream Elements. That is something that I built myself. That will be coming up in a future video, so please look forward to it. So within the current metric ID, what we're going to do is we're going to set the position to absolute. And then we're going to have the font family as agency FB, and then the alternate as system UI. Now, this is just purely a stylistic choice on my end. I really like agency FB. And then we want the font size to be 52 pixels. We want the margin to be 0. Then we also want the top and the left attributes to be 50%. Then we also, in order to make sure that all of the information that we have here stays in the center, we want to transform and then translate all of this 50% or negative 50% in the vertical and the horizontal. So we want this to go negative 50% and then negative 50%, like so. And then the next thing that we want to do is we want to make sure that any image tags within the current metric div are handled in a specific way. So what we're going to do is we're going to say current metric image, and then we're going to say we want the height of the images that are put in here to be 50 pixels, and then we want the width of these to be handled automatically. And then we also set up a specific metric image CSS class, which has a margin left of 8 pixels, so it's not sitting right on the edge of the overlay itself. We also want to set up a class for the metric text, so that our text within each rotating metric or social or what have you is going to be styled in a specific way, which it actually looks like I got myself mixed up. The margin text class is the one that is supposed to have the margin left of 8 pixels. The metric image is supposed to have a position of relative and a top position shifted down by 5 pixels, so that there again it's not sitting right on the edge of the overlay. Then let's give ourselves a little bit of breathing room. Next, what we want to do is we want to set up the animation that you're seeing whenever the individual socials or metrics are going in and out. So what we want to do is we want to set up another keyframe animation. So we're going to say keyframes, and we're going to say metric animation. And within this, we want to set up 4 different stop points or keyframes. So at 0%, we want the opacity to be at 0. And then at 5%, we want the opacity to be at 100%. And then at 95%, we want to make sure that the opacity remains at 100% because we need this to stay for a few seconds. And then at 100%, we want the opacity to go back to 0 so that it can be ready for the next animation to then fade in, like so. So now, what we want to do is we want to set up a specific class for the individual metrics. So what we're going to do is we're going to set up a .metric class, which is going to be the container that holds the individual metrics. Within this metric class, we're going to start it off with an opacity of 0. We also want to set the animation name to the animation that we just set up, which is metric animation. And we want the animation duration to be 10 seconds so that each metric will stay up visibly for actually 9 seconds. Because if you look back up at the metric that the animation that we just set up, if you have the animation duration set for 10 seconds, from 0 to 5% is actually half a second. And then from 95% to 100% is another half a second. So it takes 1 full second for one animation to fade out and the next one to fade in. So next thing you want is you want to have the animation fill mode set to forwards so that we don't get any odd behavior whenever the animation is complete. Give ourselves a little more padding. Now that that's set up, what we want to do is we want to set up the goal bar. So the goal bar is what is containing all of the individual trackable metrics that you see. So like for the follow goals and the sub goals and anything else that we want to track specifically with a trackable bar like what we're seeing. And thank you for the follow, Prodigal Techie. Glad you're enjoying the stream. Feel free to join us in chat. How are you? So what we're going to have within our goal bar is we need the display of this to be specifically a display of inline block. Otherwise, whenever we start setting this as divs, what it's going to do is it's going to set everything on a new line, and we need all of this to be layered on top of each other. So we need this to be an inline block, and we want the font size of everything contained within the goal bar to be 42 pixels. We also want all of the text to be aligned as center so that everything stays in the middle as much as we can get it. We also want our margin vertically to be 0, and horizontally we want it to be 4 pixels on the left and the right side. We want the width of our bar to be, and this is specific to me, so if you're trying to make your overlay right under your webcam be the same thing as your webcam, you need to figure out your current webcam width and then set this accordingly. So for me, because I don't want my bar to be covering the whole space, I have mine set up as 675 pixels, so it'll stay as center to the overlay under the webcam as I can get it without actually covering the whole thing. I do want a little bit of white space on the left and the right side. And we also want the height of this thing to be 50 pixels. Again, so we can have a little bit of wiggle room. We want the background, so the interior of this, we want this to be transparent, so that whenever we set up the actual progress bar of this, it's actually going to show the green on top of it. So it's going to layer the green on top of it, and it's going to look like an actual progress bar. And so that it looks more like a box, what we're going to do is we're going to set up a border. We want this border to be super small, so it's just going to be 1 pixel. We want the border itself to be solid, and we want the color of it to be navy. I wanted it initially maybe to be solid black, but I mean, it didn't quite look right. So whenever I was setting all that stuff, I was like, let's just go with navy. Not to mention my default color scheme for just pretty much anything is primary color is like a gray or a silver, and then the secondary color as like a blue. And then if there's any kind of trim that needs to happen, I'll have it as like an orange or a gold or something like that. So this kind of fits my color scheme a bit better as well. So now, whenever we want to show the actual progress of our goals, we're going to have another class, and we want to call this goal progress. And within this class, this is what's actually going to show the bar that shows how far along we are into reaching our goal. So we want this background color to be, I had to pick this one beforehand, lawn green. You can have, this is whatever you want. And then I have my height the same as my height for the bar container itself. For the goal bar, we have this as 50 pixels, so it takes up the entire space of the goal bar. And since there's actually going to be text within this, we don't want the text to actually wrap around and take up more than one line. So the way that you stop having word wrapping in CSS is you say white space and then no wrap. So it keeps everything on the same line, no matter what you do. So there is no more text wrap. And this is going to help for goals that you have the text kind of overlapping into the goal bar itself. And so it won't actually just like put it down onto multiple lines, which will end up breaking the whole visual element of this. And so the last thing that we need is to set up, as you can see, whenever the metrics rotate around on my webcam setup right here, you'll see that I have for the follows and the sub goals, there's the current amount of follows or subs that we have right now, and then the goal number for the follow goal or the sub goal that we're trying to reach afterwards. And so in order to have those things stay on the right and the left, we need to have separate classes in CSS to make sure that happens. So what we're going to do is we're going to set up another one. I'm going to say goal text left. We want the position of this to be absolute. We want the top of it to be set 5 pixels down. So we want the top of the thing to be 5 pixels below the top edge of the container. And we want the left edge to be, we want the left position to be 10 pixels offset from the left edge of the container. And we want the font size to be 42 pixels. And for the right side, what we can do is we can just copy the goal text left, like so, and then just change the text and the title to be goal text right, and keep everything the same, except for whenever we have the left attribute, we want to switch this to the right attribute. So this is going to force this to go to the right side of the container and set it off from the right edge by 10 pixels. Then we can get rid of our buffer area right here to keep things clean. And now that we've got all of our CSS stuff set up, we can more easily get to our actual front-end JavaScript stuff that's going to allow the functionality of our socials and metrics banner to actually work and function. So within this, we are going to set up our socket listener first, or just our socket in general first. So like we've done in a few other videos, we're just going to set up a variable called socket, which is going to be equal to our socket.io variable from other things, and just connect it. Then we're going to set up some global variables that we're going to use to track all of this stuff. So just like before, we're going to set up some variables for current follows, current follow goal, and then current sub points, and then current sub goal. So I'll just copy and paste that in like so. And then what we're going to do is we are going to emit a socket event to our bot in order to say, hey, we want to get the current metrics from our bot that, for our current follows or current follow goals and all of that we've done before. So we want to emit an event to our bot. We just want to call that get Twitch metrics, which we set up the event listener in the bot already. And we're just going to pass it a data set of just an empty string. Since we don't need the thing to actually do anything for us, we just, need to get information back. So now that that's set up, what we're going to do is we are going to grab the HTML element that's going to contain each of our individual metrics. So we're going to say a constant of current metric, and we're just going to say document.getElementById, by ID, and we're going to grab the ID of current metric from our HTML file. Next, what we want to do is we want to set up a rather large array that is going to contain each of the individual things that we want to show on our overlay ticker. So what we're going to do is we're going to have an overlay that is going to contain within each element a bit of HTML. And then what we're going to do is we are going to target individual elements within this array to dynamically change them based on the dynamic information that we're going to get back from the bot, specifically our follows and our subs, and then use that to track our goals with that. The way that we're going to do that is I've already set all this up. So we're going to first set up a div, and this div is going to have a class of metric. So this is just making things easier for me with autocomplete since we've already set up all of the things that we need for the CSS classes within the CSS file. So because it's in the CSS file already, it just gives me autocomplete for the IDE for the CSS classes. Then what we want to do is we want to set up a span, and the span is going to have a class of metric image, like so. And then within this span, we are going to create an image tag. And within this image tag, we are going to have a source attribute, and that is going to go to our assets folder, which we have up here on the folder structure, if you're paying attention to the left side. So we have a assets folder, and I added in some logos within the assets folder to the various things that we're going to be showing within the ticker. So we're going to have the assets folder, and then I'm going to say /YouTube _ logo, and just make sure that you have your images named in a specific format so you can make this easier for you momentarily, which you'll see what I mean in a second. And that's all you need. So we're going to have the logo pop up, and then right next to this, we're going to set up another span, and this span is going to have a class of image text. So I'm going to surround this in single quotes. We're going to set up another span. This is going to have a class name of metric text, and within this span, so we're just going to have the text of / and then my name, so Sir Silverstar. And then after that, what we're going to do is we are going to then close our div that we opened up earlier, and then that's it. And so this is done, and then I can bring all of this down for easier readability, which I'm sure you're wondering, like, why am I doing this with all of the separate pluses everywhere when this was all just a single string? This was just for readability. So what this is this is just a single metric for a single thing that we want to show up on the ticker. So this is what's going to show my YouTube address. So it's going to show the YouTube logo from an image that I've saved within the assets folder. And then it's going to, beside that, just put / Sir Silverstar. And then that's it. That's all it is. And so this is a single, what I'm calling metric. And so what we can do is we can do this several more times in order to keep things consistently formatted, and also to keep things easier for us to rotate in and out. So I've already prepared this for a few of these. So let me just copy and paste that in to keep things easier for us. So as you can see here, what we have is I've just set up a few more metrics here. One for my YouTube, one for my Twitter, and one for my Discord. And for my Discord, since most people are going to be seeing this ticker on my stream, I just set this up as a chat command. So it's just going to show up as !Discord in order to keep things, easy there, so people can know to just type in !Discord within the chat, and it will show the Discord address within the stream chat. Now for the next two metrics, this is where things are going to get interesting. So what we're doing is we are setting up these next two to be the containers for our follow goals and our sub goals. So what we're going to do is we are first going to set these up as placeholders, and then we're going to change them dynamically whenever things get updated from the bot and then sent over to this overlay. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to set up a quick little div that's only going to be a placeholder. And this div is going to have a class of metric, just like before. And the content of this is just going to be updating follow goal. And then we can just copy this and paste it again for the sub goal, like so. Now what we can do is we can just enter a few times to give ourselves some visual padding. And what I have after this is just a few more elements, just like before with the YouTube and Twitter and Discord, to just round things off. So I'll copy and paste those things in as well, like so. So what we have here is we have another metric that we set up in order to encourage people to subscribe with their Prime subs if they have one available and they choose to do so. And we also have one for the Twitch logo and for my Twitch address for those of you watching on YouTube that are curious where you can catch me live. So the Twitch logo is much more so for people watching this later than for people watching this directly on Twitch, because otherwise it just doesn't make sense. So that's it for the things that we want to rotate. These are all of the things that we want to rotate out on the ticker itself. And now what we have to do is first set up how the ticker works, and then we need to set up updating the follow and the sub goals automatically and programmatically. So whenever the bot receives, say, a new follow or a new sub, it needs to be able to update the tracker accordingly. So the first thing we're going to do in order to actually make the ticker actually tick is we're going to set up one more variable, and we're going to call this variable current metric index, and we're going to set this to 0. And this metric index is going to be in relation to the metrics array that we just set up here. And so now what we want to do is we want to set up an interval that is going to run every 10 seconds. So this interval is going to take in 2 arguments, one of which is going to be a function, like we've done plenty of times up to this point, and then the time that it takes to wait before it runs the next interval. So 10 seconds is just 10,000 milliseconds. So a 10 with 4, well, a 1 with 4 zeros. And within this function, what we want to do is we first want to clear out the current metric that is being shown. So we're going to say the current metric, which is the HTML element that we assigned up top, dot inner HTML, and we just want to set that to an empty string. So we just want to reset this. And then we want to set that HTML, once it's cleared, to the metrics array at the current metric index, right? So what it's going to do is it's first going to say, okay, the metric index is 0, so it's first going to show our YouTube address and the image. And then what we want to do is we want to say we want to just increment the current metric index. And the way you do that is you just say current metric index plus plus, which is just going to increment it by 1. So it's the same thing as if I was to say current metric index equals current metric index plus 1. It's the same thing. So this is just a easier way of saying the same thing. So, and once we have that, we're going to set up a conditional that says if the current metric index is greater than the metrics array length minus 1. So meaning that if we've covered every element within that array, what we need to do is we need to reset the current metric index back to 0 so that we don't get a array index out of bounds error. So what this is going to do is it's going to rotate it's going to cycle through every index of the array, and then once it gets to the end, it's going to say, hey, we don't have anything more to work with, so we need to go back to the beginning. So that is how we're actually going to cycle through the individual elements of the array and actually show the individual elements of the ticker. So now moving on, what we can do is we need to set up the dynamic portions of the ticker. So meaning the follow goals and the sub goals, and have them actually track and show the progress bars of the individual ones. So we need to set up a socket listener so that whenever we get new information from the bot, we can do something with it as soon as we get it. So we're going to set up a socket on, and we're going to have the event name listening for get Twitch metrics, as we've done before, like so. And then we want to also take an argument in of a function that has a parameter that's just called Twitch metrics. And within this function, we are going to first assign the values to the follow goals, the current follows, the follow goal, the sub point, and the sub goal that we get from the bot, so that the overlay here matches what we get from the bot. So I'll just copy and paste that in like so. So we're just setting the data for the individual variables to the appropriate values that we're getting from the bot. And now what we're going to do is we are going to change the elements of element 3 and 4, which are here. So the follow goals and the sub goals, those are on elements 3 and 4. So if you're actually counting, they're on the 4th and 5th places, but because JavaScript starts counting at 0, they're at elements 3 and 4 in this case. So what we're going to do is we are going to reassign the value first of the metrics array at index 3. And we're just going to give it an entirely new set of HTML. So what we're going to do is we are going to set up a div with a class of metric, just like we did before. Okay. And then within this div, we are going to set up another div. This div is going to have a class of goal text left. So this is what's going to have the current amount of followers that we have within the current overlay data. So what I'm going to do is, now that this is auto-completing, what I'm going to do is we're going to just separate this by single quotes, make sure it aligns correctly, and then pull in the current follows. Now that we have that, I'm going to just keep this like this, try and keep things nice and readable this time. Then what we're going to do is we are going to set up another div. This div is going to have a class of goal bar. So this is what's going to actually be the bar that contains all of the progress that we've made so far. And so before, separate this out by single quotes, because we're going to need some data in between. And within the goal bar, we're going to set up another div. So let me bring this down. That div is going to be our progress bar. So we're going to set up another div with a class of goal bar. And we're also going to add in a separate style attribute here. So because what we need to do here is we need to have the width of this bar be dynamic. And so we can't set up a dynamic width of this within CSS. So we have to do this specifically within the JavaScript. So this is going to get a little bit hairy. So what we're going to do is we're going to set up, we have to be very careful with our quotes and single quotes here. So otherwise things will break very quickly. So what we're going to do is we are going to have a style attribute equals width with regular double quotes, and then colon space, and then we're going to put a single quote because we need to close this off. We're going to add in a bit of math here. So what we're going to do is we're going to say this is what's going to determine the actual width of our progress bar. The way that we're going to do that is we're going to say we need the math.floor. So we need this to always round down. And within this, we're going to run a simple formula. We're going to say the current follows divided by the current followed goal. And then multiply this times 100 so that we get an actual percentage. And then what we're going to do is we are going to say plus and then a single quote, and then a percent sign, and then a space, and then single quote plus, and then a single quote, so that what we're doing is we are opening the double quotes right here, which is what's containing the style attribute values. And because the rest of this is within single quote strings, we need to have the rest of this contained like this. And then we have to have this as a percent because that's how CSS reads this. And then close it off and then go to the next CSS or HTML class that we're assigning. And so I realized that is really sticky. So you just gotta be very careful with your, single quotes and your double quotes, this is why we use single quotes for all of the HTML that we've done so far, and because we have to have double quotes in certain scenarios, like when assigning HTML classes and then dynamic information like this for a style tag. So that is the main reason that we're doing that. So, which I actually put this class right here is the wrong one. We need to have this as null progress. And then we're going to say that the content of this div is just going to be single quotes follows. So as you can see, as my ticker goes, it is showing on the progress bar the word follows. And so that's contained within the progress bar itself, so the green bar. And so you can see also that whenever the sub bar comes along the subpoints bar, it's showing it centered within the green part of the subpoints bar. So the wording actually stays center within the actual progress of the goal, not within the bar itself. And then for the last part, we just close off the last div, and then we're done, at least with that. And then we have one more div to input, which is our current follow goal. So what we're going to do is we're going to have one more div, and that is going to have a class of goal text right. And within this, we are just going to have the content be the current followed goal, which is the number that you're seeing on the right side of the goal metric ticker. Then we close that div, and then we close the last div that we opened at the beginning. That's it. So this is how we update the current follow goal dynamically. And the sub goal is basically the same thing with a slight variation. So what I'm going to do is just copy and paste in the sub goal and explain what I've done, because like I said, it's basically the same thing. So for the sub goal, there is only one slight difference. So you can see here that I've set up a div for the overall metric and then for the goal text left. Now, the difference here is that I set up a conditional, a ternary if statement that shows that if the progress of the current sub goal is less than 30%, we do not want the current sub point to be shown. And the reason for that is that so what I noticed is that if we have a goal metric that is currently at 30% or less, 29% or less to the current goal, the words subpoints actually overlap on top of the current subpoint number. And so that's just kind of ugly. So what I did is I have it to where if the current progress to the sub goal is 30% or higher, that means that the word subpoints is not going to overlap. So we want to actually show the current number of subpoints that we have. Otherwise, we just want to leave this div blank. And then otherwise, everything else is the same. And this is everything that you need to know in order to create the exact same webcam social and goal tracking ticker that you see under my webcam. So as I said, a lot of the stuff that I've done is very specific to my setup. However, all of the logic is there in order to actually get a result that you would be satisfied with for your own needs. Future Silver here. While editing this video, I realized I never told you how to best use this in OBS with your webcam so it all stays connected and easy to use. What you want to do is create a new scene that will hold both your webcam and the banner we just made. I called mine Webcam Management. Then add your webcam to this scene and use the crop filter to bring the width of your webcam to what you feel most comfortable with. Then click your webcam source and press Ctrl-E and note the width of your webcam. Now create a browser source for the banner we just made and use the settings you see on the screen, but change your width to the width of your webcam source. Drag that source to the bottom left of your scene, then put the bottom edge of your webcam on the top edge of the banner. Now to use your webcam, go to your normal scene and add a scene source. Select your webcam scene and you're done. So in the next video, we're going to continue with using all of these metrics that we've been gathering in order to make a very custom credits scroll that we can use for the end of the stream. So I'm sure you've seen places like Streamlabs or Stream Elements do their own little scroll thing for credits showing like the current amount of follows that you got, or the current subs and who subbed, or gift subs and cheers and all of that. So we are going to build our own version of that and also have extra things that we can have within our credits, such as our milestone events. So like whenever we hit over 1,000 followers or so many subs or anything like that. So you can find that on the screen at some place that I'm going to leave. And if you're also curious about the rest of this, you can also find the remainder of the Build a Twitch Bot from Scratch playlist within the channel playlists. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.